Hey, you want to know why everything sucks? I'll tell you why everything sucks. This is a tweet from Steve Deace. Steve Deace is a conservative commentator from the state of Iowa. He gets real personal in this long tweet, but he makes an essential point that I want to help him share. He has met with tremendous success in his show. He's got a radio show, podcast. He's part of The Blaze, and he's done extraordinarily well, and he tells you exactly how well. And he goes on to make the point, telling the tale about how he was considering buying a new house, that in spite of the fact that he's lived in the same house for 18 years, and it's been a relatively modest home, the type of home that you and I might have, he can't find a seller in this market. And if he did, he would end up having to pay $500K a month in mortgage to move on up. And I mean, this is just nuts. And he goes on to make the point that if this is the way it is for people like him, imagine what it's like for people like his daughter and her husband, the next generation, folks who are looking at how they're going to make ends meet moving forward. How do people get started nowadays? And what it reminds me of is, when we sit in committee, I'm on the Children and Families Committee, for instance, and one of the things we talk about is childcare in the House of Representatives here in Minnesota. And the thing about childcare is, I don't remember this being an issue when I was growing up. I'm a kid of the 80s. I was born in 78. I don't remember childcare being a big political issue in the 90s, the 80s, certainly not the 70s or the 60s. And the reason why might have something to do with the fact that my dad was the sole breadwinner, and on his one income, and he only had one job, we were able to maintain a home, 2 vehicles, and go on vacation from time to time and take trips to, places that families like to go, whether it was the Detroit Zoo at the time or whatever the case may be. We were able to live a good life on one income growing up in the 80s. You can't do that today. And the question is, why? And it's not, I'll tell you what, it's not because of capitalism. It's not because of the greed of the rich. The reason why we have income inequality in this country is because we have intentionally, as federal policy, devalued our dollar. We have taken the money in our wallet and we have made it worth less. That's what increased prices mean. That chart, I'll show you again. This chart that Steve Deace is showing off, that chart tells you how bad inflation is right now. That matters to families. That is the reason why people in middle-class homes with 2 incomes, people bringing in Deace's case, $400,000 a year, can't move, can't find a buyer for their home, can't buy a new house. That is why you have folks who can't afford childcare and have to make choices between whether or not they're going to eat or send their kid to childcare or take a second job. Every choice is a bad choice. There are no good choices in this environment, in this economy. And the politics that surrounds this is absolutely abhorrent. Nobody is talking about the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that we're printing too much money and we're turning around and spending it. And we are not producing equivalent value, and that results in inflation. Our focus should be on production. If you go back to 1971, you will see that production and wages rose at the same rate. Since we went off the gold standard, there's been a sharp and continuing deviation between those two. That is why you feel as though no matter how hard you work, or no matter how well you follow the rules or do what you were raised to do in terms of being a good citizen and a productive worker, that you never seem to get ahead. You never get ahead because the government is stealing all of your money. And not just in the form of overt taxes and fees, but in the form of inflation. Inflation is a hidden tax that takes the actual value of what you have away from you, and it doesn't require men and guns to come to your house and take your stuff. It's the most insidious heist that has ever been committed upon a people in the history of human civilization. We pat ourselves on the back for having undone chattel slavery, but we replaced it with a more prolific, persistent, and insidious form of slavery that we are all shackled under. It's time for it to end.